On today's show, Joker had another huge weekend at the box office. Then we've got a trailer for a new Robert Downey Jr. movie. It's Dolittle. And then Martin Scorsese is still taking digs at Marvel. We're going to discuss it on today's show. Happy Monday, everyone. Hope you all had a wonderful weekend. We've got a great show planned for you today with John Rocha and Eric Eisenberg. But as always, we kick things off with the call sheet, and we've got quite the lineup here. Of course, it is Monday, so we got to begin with the box office report. And it was a huge, huge weekend, too, for Joker. It only dropped 43%, which means it made another $55 million. As for our two newcomers, we had a winner and a loser. The Addams Family took the 2 spot with a very solid $30 million, but then Gemini Man could only snag $20.5 million, which is a fairly rough go considering the film's reported $138 million production budget. Now, moving over to that Martin Scorsese story yet again. According to The Hollywood Reporter, Scorsese echoed his previous comments about Marvel movies during a press conference for The Irishman. Here's what he said. "It's not cinema, it's something else. We shouldn't be invaded by it. We need cinemas to step up and show films that are narrative films. Theaters have become amusement parks. That is all fine and good, but don't invade everything else in that sense. That is fine and good for those who enjoy that type of film, and by the way, knowing what goes into them now, I admire what they do. It's not my kind of thing. It simply is not. It's creating another kind of audience that thinks cinema is that." Moving on over to some form of cinema, we've got a trailer for Dolittle starring Robert Downey Jr. So this movie is being described as a reimagining of the classic story and will tell the tale of a physician and a veterinarian living in Victorian England who discovers he can talk to animals. Stay tuned for the panel's thoughts on this one. All right, moving on over to our next story today. We're highlighting a Collider.com feature because we're about halfway through October already, so I hope you have your horror movie lists and you're chipping away at them. But if you need a little bit of help adding to those lists, Collider.com has you covered. There is a whole bunch of horror movie content up on the site right now, but what we want to highlight is one called The Best Halloween Movie Streaming on Netflix Right Now. We've got a link to that article in the description section of this video, so check it out after the show. We need to wrap up today's call sheet on a very sad note because actor Robert Forster died on Friday at the age of 78 following a battle with brain cancer. Forster began his career in 1967, Reflections in a Goldeneye, starring opposite Elizabeth Taylor and Marlon Brando. Later on, he made a star turn in Quentin Tarantino's 1997 crime film Jackie Brown, which earned him a Best Supporting Actor nomination. His over 200 credits include recent memorable roles on television, which include Twin Peaks: The Return and Breaking Bad, playing Ed the vacuum salesman. He even reprised that role for El Camino, which debuted on Netflix the morning of his passing. Our deepest condolences to Forster's friends, family, and fans. All right, before we move into our panels for the day, we've got a little clip for you from El Camino. Steve sat down with Aaron Paul. Check out this clip.
Even though Vince is a genius, like he's a god, a genius.
He is a god.
You're right. Like at any point though, were you saying to him, you know, the finale's kind of amazing. Do we want to play with this at all, or were you sort of like, he's gonna get this?
I had no doubt in my mind that he would nail it. No doubt. And I'm with you. I think it is so hard to nail a landing when ending a series, especially a very popular one like Breaking Bad, because everyone is so connected and passionate about it, but they also don't want to say goodbye. And they're like, if you're going to say goodbye, you better fucking do it perfectly. And I think Vince and the writers really nailed the landing.
Were there a lot of deleted scenes in the movie? Do you remember, or is it very close to what you shot?
You know what? About 30% of the movie was cut.
Really?
Yeah. The original cut was about 3 hours. Yeah. I know. That's what I said. That's what I said to him when I first saw it. I was like, this is so beautiful, but where's the other part of the movie? You know, and he's like, I don't want to bore people. I go, Vince, people want more. Like, more is more in this situation. So maybe down the road there'll be another cut. But With that said, I think what we have is great. It's great.
My heart hurts. Do
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I'm like,
well, there's another cut out there, so maybe I can convince him to release it.
All right, guys, time to roll into today's panel. So I have to introduce my panelists right now. Eric Eisenberg, John Rocha. Hi.
Hello.
How you doing? How was your weekend?
Great.
Did you see anything that you're allowed to talk about?
No. In fact, everything is under embargo right now.
I caught myself after I asked that question.
Yeah.
How's life, Rocha?
It's good. I've got a new record player, so I'm pretty much consumed by that. Buying records left and right, making my girlfriend crazy, worrying about our finances. But I'm enjoying it, putting on nice Bluetooth headphones and chilling out and enjoying some records. This is great. I'm 15 again. It's great. I love it.
That was like a whole bunch of product placement right
man.
there.
But I didn't mention any brands.
All right, that's
Nice.
fair. That's fair. Except the big Dunkin' Donuts cup.
Hello.
Yeah,
this is
right
good
there.
iced tea.
All right, let's roll into my favorite segment of the entire week. It is the box office. So, big weekend at the box office for I would say 3 movies that I believe we're going to discuss right now.
Sure.
So I will just throw it out there to you guys, and whoever wants to jump in first, feel free. Of everything in the box office this weekend, what stuck out to you the most?
I mean, we talked about this last week, right, Perry? This idea of how many people are going to go back and see Joker again. You even said you're going to go back. So, and like this is wow, incredible what it has done. And once again, you got to go back and remember when people were like, I don't even know if this movie's even going to happen. I don't believe this movie's going to happen. There were rumors about Scorsese being involved at the beginning, but this has been an incredible gamble by Warner Brothers that has really worked out for them. As much as you might say Black Panther or Logan or whatever, this is the film that's come out and really been argued about as either overblown or a masterpiece. And this is what you want to push, again, the genre of superhero films forward. The fact that people are responding to go back to a second weekend where the drop-off is so much less than a lot of the box office prognosticators thought it would be speaks to the power of the film. I mean, $500 million worldwide already for an origin movie, a gritty, dirty, ugly, brutal origin movie about a villain is incredible. So clearly they did something right with this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I will also just add, like, it's not only is it dark, gritty, and dramatic, but like it's not a big action movie.
Yes.
It has like
No
slow
explosions.
dance sequences, and again, this is a
Yeah.
movie that's made $500 million. Like, that's crazy. That doesn't happen in today's box office environment.
Also, the irony is this, right? They're saying, the superhero movies are killing these smaller independent films. This is literally a smaller independent film about a well-known subject, but for $50 million, it's pretty incredible the way it's walked the line and kind of put its foot in both camps.
It's a mid-range studio film.
There you go.
Not- It's definitely not independent. But
Well, in comparison to some of the budgets, but yeah, I hear you.
I was actually on the high end with my predictions for Joker, and I still wasn't anywhere close. That is an extremely low drop for a movie that made as much as it did weekend one.
42.8%, yeah.
The question I have for you guys, though, is how long is this going to continue? Because I don't think we have like the hottest lineup of things coming up through the rest of October, but Maleficent is expected to make a pretty penny there. So do you guys think that this trend is going to continue, or are we going to see a bigger drop next weekend?
Well, I think what it is like, and the reason partially why this has happened is, I mean, kind of to your point, which is that the reactions to this movie have been so extreme that people kind of just want to see it so that they can have their own opinion on it. So they can go to that water cooler on Monday and say, okay, I saw Joker, now I can talk about it. In that sense, like, now we are at a point where most people probably have seen this movie. I mean, the movie's almost made $200 million domestically, not to mention 500 international. So I do wonder if it is going to, how it's going to do this next weekend. That being said, like, Maleficent 2 and Zombieland 2 are the big movies out this weekend, and that's not necessarily going to steal, I feel like, the core audience of this film. And also, I mean, like, yes, it's been very divisive, but also a lot of people are really loving it.
Yeah.
So I think that that is going to generate like return visits.
I do have a feeling that the need to see it again is going to kick in too. I don't know if I'm going to go as low as 40-something%, especially low 40s next weekend, but I still think it's going to maintain pretty well. But speaking of movies that are sparking a whole lot of conversation and are becoming absolute must-sees, we got to talk about Parasite. What'd you think of that one, Saul?
It's amazing. I mean, like, it didn't make the top 10. It was 13th place. However, it was in three theaters. And it made a grand total of $376,264 average per theater, which is a record. It is remarkable. I'm sorry, that's $125,423. It made $376,000, but still, like $125,000 per theater from three theaters. that's ridiculous. That doesn't happen. Like
It's
that is
crazy.
And this is a movie that has been gaining a ton of buzz since it won the Palme d'Or at Cannes, and so like this has been generating a lot of conversation. And of course, Bong Joon-ho is just a remarkable filmmaker who has started to gain an interesting following.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's both surprising and not surprising at the same time.
I really hope Neon looks at these numbers and decides to, maybe even expand further than they were planning on. They're having an incredible year. I mean, I don't necessarily know if it's other than Parasite, if you could see it in the box office returns, but when you think about the movies that they released between Loose, Wild Rose, and now this, they're one of the most exciting distributors I can see out there. And I just hope that they mount quite the campaign for this, because yes, only 3 theaters, but this narrative here, this is where you start an award season campaign. This is a great story, and it could create a whole lot of urgency to go see this movie in the coming weeks.
Yeah, I think it should be nominated for Best Picture. Absolutely. I mean, just having seen it twice now, it's kind of an incredible film that speaks about class issues, poverty issues, the eating the rich, kind of some of the themes that are in Joker as well. So very interesting to see it being explored in this way. And it's it's so Korean, like it's provincially Korean, right? And so, but the themes are universal, and that's the gift that Bong Joon-ho has with his movies. And I find this to be another one that don't give it just the foreign language thing. Give it the legitimate Best Picture. If you're going to start talking about being a more diverse, younger voting body, you've also got to open your minds to being a more global voting body as well. And when these films creep over into the States and they get such a great response on only 3 theaters, like you said, Perri, that speaks volumes about its power.
I mean, and also, I think just that Roma last year, I think, opened a door in a huge way.
Yeah.
'Cause, like, last year, there was a huge conversation. Because, I mean, it wasn't the first foreign language film to be nominated for Best Picture, but it certainly was the first in a long time, and it did make a lot of waves, and I think it will kind of open doors for Parasite in a lot of ways.
But this is different because Spanish is so close to all our, like, Korean is like all the way over here, so that would speak volumes as well to make that decision.
It's such a complicated conversation because it's like the way we talk about it, it's like these are the best foreign films, and then the Best Picture options are above it, which
it's not fair.
It's not fair. It's not really the case, but like you have 2 different categories. I don't know, but it goes back to everybody out there being human beings when they vote, and sometimes maybe the mentality could be if I'm going to vote for it in this category, then I'm not going to give it again in this category. I'll give that honor to something new.
Spread the
but
love, right.
I kind of want to see Parasite be the talk of the town going through award season right now. That's another one that I can't wait to see again. Then we have to look at the flip side of the box office this weekend because poor Gemini Man. Addams Family wound up exceeding expectations, but Gemini Man underperformed a little, and not by all that much as far as, studio expectations went. It's just when you throw in how much it cost to actually make that movie, it was a pretty big bust. Did you guys see it coming?
Kind of, sort of. I mean, like, it is. I mean, it's also interesting just to think of, like, it's a 138 reported budget, but that's not also including the 22 years of development that it went through. Not spent. I mean, like, and this is a movie that should. Like, I think Paramount was looking at this movie and saying, like, this has all the makings of a big screen event. I mean, it has Will Smith, it has bombastic visual effects, it's trying something new. And I mean, I think part of the problem is just that, like, I mean, the movie isn't very good. I mean, that obviously doesn't help anything. But I was personally interested in HFR. I actually do think that it lends the movie an interesting look, and I think it's just interesting from a technology perspective. But I mean, as we saw with The Hobbit, it's not an easy thing to sell to an audience, or I mean, with Billy Lynn for that matter as well. And so I can't say I'm overly shocked by this, but at the same time, I am.
So do you think the high frame rate at all gave viewers out there pause? It's like, what if we got a double Will Smith movie, but you didn't add that tech advancement to it?
I mean, part of it is that I think I even read reports that said that, like, most theaters weren't actually equipped to even show it in high frame rate. So I mean, that's kind of a flub by itself. But I mean, I do think that, I mean, there was some expectation. I mean, not only with HFR, but also the advanced visual effects that create a young Will Smith. I thought that was going to maybe Paramount certainly thought that was going to generate more interest among audience, but turns out not so much.
Yeah. This is, I mean, when I saw it, I'm like, I like this stuff. The higher end, the technology, I'm into. I have it on my television as well, the 120. I watch. I love it. I know some people don't like it. Obviously, we saw that video from Macquarie and Cruz and all those people.
You want to tell everybody how big your TV is, don't you?
No. I'm just saying I like that technology. I love it, and I want to push back against these traditionalists who don't like their movies looking that way. way, I enjoyed it. So I'm glad to hear Eric likes it as well. But I don't think that's what like kept people from coming. I think it was more that Will doesn't open films anymore, and something like this is an original content. He doesn't open films the way he used to, right?
Yeah, you can't like give him Aladdin.
Yeah,
just because it's Aladdin.
Aladdin,
right?
Yeah, Aladdin's already name recognition. Suicide Squad already name recognition. That's more of an ensemble piece, right?
Right.
This is Will Smith on his own, carrying film. Two Will Smiths, no less. You should get double the bang for your box office buck, but it still wasn't enough. And I also think the reviews kind of hurt it. They weren't that strong for it as well, because people love Will Smith as a person. Sure. They want to go patronize his movies.
Also, Mary Elizabeth Winstead is also wonderful.
Yeah, she's fantastic. Why don't you put her in the Birds of Prey trailer? Just a suggestion. Those kinds of things are positive for Gemini Man. And Ang Lee has such a great name as well amongst a lot of people who love movies. But unfortunately, the combo really didn't work. And I wonder about Ang Lee coming at us, because Billy's Long Halftime Walk wasn't that good either. So you start to have questions about where the next big hit film for Ang Lee is going to be, either artistically or commercially, when that's coming. But Will's going to be fine. It's just a shame that this didn't quite step, because the story is terrible. The graphics, the visuals are amazing, and please, more of that. But the story itself, it just wasn't good. That's why I think it didn't. That's why I think
I'm
it
not going to
failed.
turn this into a Gemini Man review, just because I'm so tempted by this panel transition I have right now.
Sure.
Going from one big expense that turned into a flop to potentially another right now. Let's talk about this Dolittle trailer. Yeah. I don't even know where to start. I can't quite figure out at what point I understand. I mean, again, we're talking about name recognition here. And yes, Robert Downey Jr. has it, but I think we were talking about this on a previous movie talk, that just because you're a super hot name in general, but also because you are super hot because of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, doesn't necessarily translate to a hit. We just had Tessa Thompson and Chris Hemsworth lead a Men in Black movie that, yes, wasn't that good, but also was a pretty big failure.
Right.
This feels like that all over again. I just don't understand, when something is so expensive as this movie is, how someone along the way, of all the tons of people who have to work on a film to make the thing happen, how did no one express concern or decide to push the pause button or give up?
Just say, like, wait, let's think about what we're doing here. Honestly, the thing with this trailer for me is just like, the tone confused the hell out of me. Like, it's just like, this is supposed to be like a silly movie where a guy, like a doctor, talks to animals, and like it's painting it as this giant, huge epic, and like, and just like, and they have that like slow song, and I'm just like, this is odd.
Yeah.
This just doesn't work.
It
like,
also
it's just,
looks so dated. Those effects, they're not good.
No, those animals just don't look real. They,
No,
they look
like that ostrich behind you smiling at you, like that doesn't
the
look
poster
real.
I can't even get into. Yeah, no, it's.
I don't know. I mean, it's tough, because you have to look at Robert Downey Jr.'s choices outside of the MCU, and they haven't really all worked out financially, right? And
Well, I think this is his first live act. I think this is his first non-MCU movie since The Judge.
That's what I'm saying. So those are the things you have to make, because
Yeah.
obviously Sherlock Holmes is a franchise itself, and MCU is a franchise. But these choices he seems to be making are really interesting in terms of the fact that they don't look like they work out that well for him. And this is another one to throw in there. And I'm so confused. I was so confused when Stephen Gaghan took this. Am I saying that right, Gaghan?
Yes, I think that's right.
That he took this film, because I really liked his work on Syriana. That is a film I champion all the time as a writer. He wrote that film, and I enjoyed Gold. I really thought McConaughey was fantastic, and Bryce Dallas Howard as well in Gold. But this seems like such a lightweight cotton candy film for him to do. His more serious sensibilities get lost in this, and you're right, Eric. The tone is so imbalanced. You don't know what you're supposed to be going for. It feels like a bunch of people saw Golden Compass and thought, "Hey, let's make some version of that," and it really just doesn't look that interesting. And why would you use "What a Wonderful World" when "If I Could Talk to the Animals" is the song from the Dr. Dolittle movie? Why not do a slow version of that, a slow, creepy version of that, then a slow, creepy version of "What a Wonderful World"? All of it just doesn't make sense. And what's the story? I have no idea what the story is, except they were going on some adventure.
Wait, I purposely wrote down the story because you get none of it from the trailer. So it says, upon discovering his gift, the good Dr. Dolittle sets out to use his power for good in order to search, I'm going to laugh, order to search all over the world for a cure to help a young Queen Victoria recover from a serious illness while also trying to keep his ability to talk to animals under wraps.
None of
so
that is in
much.
the movie. None of that is in the trailer, rather. rather. None of that is in the trailer.
No.
And you know, I want to mention this. We talked about it off camera. Those it's been going over all over Twitter. These 4 comment threads that was copied and put up there, talking from one of the people involved in the post production about working with Gay, or in the production rather, about working with Gay and some of the stuff they tried to stop him from doing, and some of them. I don't know how much of that is true. You never know what people's agenda are with this stuff. But if you read it, it makes you feel even more uncomfortable. But someone else pushed back and said that there were issues with the Rex Harrison Dr. Dolittle back in the 60s as well. So this is continuing a curse
Cycle.
of that. Yeah, that happens with these Dolittle movies.
Which is understandable in a sense, because making a movie about someone who can talk to animals, it's a challenge.
Sure.
And, you know, even going back to the very beginning, it's like years ago, if you had said to me, how about a Dr. Dolittle with Robert Downey Jr. in the title role, I would have been like, that's got all the potential in the world. But I think it is just so clear that there was a hiccup or something along the way, and it was it just did not serve it well, maybe particularly in the post-production department. But I mean, the truth of the matter is this movie is coming no matter what we say about it right now. And it's got that January 17th, 2020 release date.
Always prime stuff coming out in January.
If it's a dumping zone or not, I mean, there still is the chance to make money in January. Sure. We've seen it. I mean, maybe not with movies like this. I'm thinking about, you know, something like Split, or maybe even Get Out at the beginning of February. But do you see this as making any money whatsoever, especially with a voice cast that includes Tom Holland, Rami Malek, Octavia Spencer, Kumail Nanjiani, Marion Cotillard, and more?
Who, by the way, are also not at all represented really in this. I feel like you get actually one talking, you get the tiger talking, and there's no other talking animals really. You're just
there's the parrot going.
Okay, there's a parrot,
and
but again, this is, you have this voice cast, use them, show them off. I mean, it is clearly going to be the Robert Downey Jr. show, but I mean, I think that is a thing that, I mean, we live in an age where we have kind of moved past these star-centric projects and have moved into brand-centric projects, and so yes, Robert Downey Jr. can, whenever he shows up as Iron Man, is going to make a ton of money, but Robert Downey Jr. by himself, maybe not so much.
I mean, there's so many, like you mentioned, Perri, there's so many. It was like 3 frames of people at the end of the trailer. And you're like, wait, they're in it? You shouldn't be like, no, you should want the joy of picking out the voices as you're watching, which scares me as a first trailer, right? Because you're just like, okay, why aren't they focusing on the voices? Why aren't they? It's maybe because it's not done yet. It's not all totally set up yet. So you wonder, you ask, will it make money? I think the second trailer, if they come out with a more family-friendly, wholesome, interesting, fun trailer, then you think, you bring the kids to this, it'll be fine. But this is not the way. This is not a good first trailer to make you think it's going to make any money.
When does the new Jumanji movie come out?
December?
December 13th. Right. I feel like if that has the run that the first one did, and also now that I'm looking at the release schedule too, it's like I wonder if Cats and this are going to be similar in the urgency that comes with some morbid curiosity.
Maybe that's like the opposite side of the Joker thing, where it's just like you have to see it just to be part of the conversation.
So I wonder if that might work in its favor. But I mean, we've got a pretty loaded January of 2020, going from The Grudge to The Informer, Like a Boss, My Spy, Underwater. Then the weekend this comes out, it's this. I don't know what the last full measure is. I have to look that up. But Bad Boys for Life is also that weekend. The next weekend is The Gentleman, Run, The Turning. Then it's Gretel and Hansel and the Rhythm section. So, I mean, that's a lot of new wide releases for a month. So, as though this trailer hadn't doomed it already, right. I have a feeling this kind of just sets it in.
Put out a minor gripe, but this is just something that bothers me on a regular basis. But this movie is also originally called The Voyage of Dr. Dolittle, which I also think is like an infinitely better title.
Agreed.
Just because I feel like movie titles gotten so boring, especially ones that just rely on a single name. So the ones that just immediately, like Clint Eastwood has done it a few times, but like Richard Jewell coming out later this year, you can't come up with a better title for that story than Richard Jewell.
Do you want Richard Jewell : something? The persecution
I'll take
of an
literally
innocent?
anything. The point is just like I be more bold with titles. Like I'm so we've gotten into this rut where it's just, it's partially because of the brand recognition that you feel it's almost like SEO. You almost just have to kind of push it out there so people know what it is. But why is James Bond the only franchise that can get away with just a random title that you just throw out there? That's stupid. That's dumb. So yes, I think we should fix that and maybe even fix this title back to what
even
it was.
the Voyage thing would suit the content of the trailer.
Yeah, exactly. At least it would give you a sense of what it's about also.
It's worth considering. You know what? We have even better promos than this for our own content. So you're going to watch these promos right now and you're going to know exactly what they're for. Check them out.
Hey everyone, John Rocha here, the host of Collider Sports Time. Well, if you've been watching us every week, we break down the latest and the greatest in the world of sports, talk about the big issues, the big games, all of it with a rotating band of guests like Matt Nose and Josh McCouga. We've had Taylor Vashadi on. We've had so many great guests. Now, if you want to see more of Sports Time or you want to try it out for the first time, remember to subscribe to Collider Sports YouTube channel for all the sports goodness.
Hey guys, Riley here, and let me tell you about Rule of Two. You looking for a Star Wars fix? Well, Rule of Two is that show. It drops on Collider Video's main YouTube channel, as well as on Podcast One's Jedi Council feed. So go over there, subscribe, share it with your friends. It's hosted by myself and Mark Fernandez. We talk everything in the Star Wars universe with a lot of deep dives and a lot of conversations that go all in. You know what to do. Subscribe, join us there, and rise.
All right, time for panel number 3, and it is revisiting the Martin Scorsese Marvel quotes, not necessarily because we feel like doing it in this very moment, but more so because he's still digging at the MCU, and I don't know, I am having a hard time understanding why. Just let it lie. Regardless of how you feel about his quotes, it's enough is enough already. What do you guys think of this new round of MCU comments here?
It bums me out. There's no other way to put it, is that I found it really depressing just because I have infinite respect for Martin Scorsese. He's one of the greatest filmmakers of all time. That's a completely unchallenged statement because nobody could argue otherwise. But to say that cinema isn't cinema is maybe one of the most insulting things you could say to a filmmaker. I mean, the comment. This was for the original comment, but I feel like James Gunn's response was really kind of summed it all up, which is to say that he was out there supporting Last Temptation of Christ when there were so many people that were railing against this movie despite not having seen it, and James Gunn is a very devout Christian who went to go see this movie because out of respect for what it had to say, and obviously the filmmaker saying it, but he went to go see it to have an opinion on it. And the fact that Martin Scorsese would just completely dismiss an entire genre of popular filmmaking and call it an amusement park or a roller coaster or whatever is just that's not fair. That's just not fair, and I don't know how to put it any other way.
I'm also not quite understanding the whole narrative angle of it because the MCU movies all are narrative films.
Yeah.
They have a story to tell, and I would argue many of them, if not all of them, actually do have rich, thoughtful character journeys. But yeah, I think I'm kind of in line with what you just said, and also with what James Gunn has brought up. It's just, this is the beauty of the filmmaking industry is that there's so many different types of stories being told, so many different types of, filmmaking techniques out there. And if we belittle just one and we say that, well, that's not real cinema, then I don't know. It feels like anyone can point a finger at anything, and somebody who's really doing something special in the industry is at risk of being less than. And I feel like, especially with the Academy Award season coming around right now, we're having that conversation all the time. We need to be on equal playing field, all being open to different types of stories, different types of performances, techniques, you name it. And by saying one specific thing, especially one thing that's taking up such an immense amount of the market right now, isn't real cinema, it doesn't feel right.
I think that's where it's born from, is this idea of these are, what's that poem, rage into the dying light, do not go easy into the dying light. It's this kind of thing. Him and Spielberg are leading the way with these kinds of protests, and their words carry weight. Clearly it's been covered by us, covered by numerous outlets, and caused a lot of battles on Twitter. I personally don't care. I'm cool, say what you want to say. You've earned your right to speak about whatever you want to speak about because you're a master filmmaker and because you have decades to back up, and you're still making incredible films. As Perri reviewed The Irishman, she was very positive about it. So he's still doing his thing. But he's also from a different time. He has a different point of view of what he considers cinema. And don't forget, this is a guy who cleans up old films, finds old films, brings them back into the light, gives a lot of love through the AFI to these films. So he has even more of a personal interest in making sure cinema survives. I think he's speaking about fear, from a place of fear, which is losing these other films, which a lot of people have been talking about too, that these superhero films are drowning out these other smaller independent, or as you said earlier, Perri, the medium range films. They're getting drowned out or moved moved into streaming services and they're not getting the full cinematic treatment. It's what he fears, and I think that's where he's coming from. Now, that being said, I also think if you said, I watched one movie, couldn't even get through 20 minutes, and think you can speak about the entire genre, then I think you're wrong here and your words don't carry as much weight. It'd be different if he had seen all of these superhero movies and was like, they're just not for me. They're terrible because of this. But all he's pointing to is a few minutes of experience. I would be curious to hear what his thoughts are about Joker. I would love to hear Scorsese's thoughts about Joker, go see it, see what he thinks about it, and talk about it. But that being said, I think the comments are the comments. It's not a big deal. It doesn't hurt me as an old man raging. And remember, he and Spielberg and all those guys were the young bucks who were being stepped on by the older generation when they came up in the late 60s and early 70s. Hitchcock himself famously said he wouldn't go see a Spielberg film or something like that. So those kinds of the things where like it's just cyclical, generational. Trust me, James Gunn, all those guys are going to have something to say in 30 or 40 years when the new generation pops up. It's just the way it goes.
Well, one would hope they don't.
We hope, right?
Like I know
getting
that,
old and easy,
as an example, I know that 90s nostalgia is very important to me, and it might not have the same impact on other moviegoers who either are much older or much younger than I am.
Right.
But the point is, I think in these particular comments, we're confusing taste with the definition of cinema and whether or not a specific kind of movie is valid in that sense. And I think we need to separate the two. And it's also about keeping an open mind, just understanding that everybody out there has different tastes, even though I say, like, freak yes for 90s nostalgia movies. Like, give me more, Sandlot. I just saw Heavyweights is going to be on Disney Plus. I'm always rooting for that kind of stuff. But even if someone doesn't like it, I sit and I listen and I understand. It doesn't mean something has to be cut off from being called cinema or not.
Well,
also, I mean, I think that the audience has to be factored into this as well.
Sure.
It's not like these studios are putting out these $200 million superhero movies and then pushing everything out and then nobody's seeing them and that they're putting all their research towards that. There is an incredible demand for these kind of stories. And I don't know how you can argue against demand. Like, people want to see these films, so they're making the films for people to see. I don't see the disconnect there. And I mean, yes, if you were to put out, and also if you just deal with the reality of the business, which is that if you have a smaller movie, people aren't necessarily going to see it as much. But if you can get the same exposure via a streaming service, I think that's a great thing. And like, the theatrical experience is special. There is no ever denying that. But it is also a business that is constantly evolving, and we have moved into such interesting new places and new arenas that it is going to take an adjustment period.
I also think his point about theme park thing is a valid thing as well. How many of us go to we don't go to screens, we go to a regular movie theater and it's loud and people are on their phones and people opening candy at the most emotional moments, or kids are crying who shouldn't be in R-rated films. This is what he's talking about. It's become a mass that has no respect anymore, like theme parks are. And we're blessed to have like the ArcLight, which is a little more stringent about that kind of stuff, or occasionally the Grove or the Americana. But there are other places you can go, and you go to these theaters and you're like, what the hell? And
I don't know if that's something that's ever changed. I mean, back when I was a teeny tiny child, we were still opening up, boxes of Raisinets at all the wrong moments. I think when he says theme park, it's a little more tied to the nature of what, like a Marvel Cinematic Universe is, which I've described many of them as rides before, because they are thrilling. They take you to new worlds. There's certain action sequences in those movies, and also many other movies for that matter, that, that feeling when you're like holding your hand rests on the seat too tight and you don't realize it until after the action sequence is over. So I actually think that the theme park thing, regardless of how he meant it, I don't think that's a negative descriptor for a movie, especially one of these kinds of movies.
But part of what it makes me think about, though, is that like there's been a lot of talk about like virtual reality in recent years and like how they can be applied in cinematic language. And the difference between virtual reality and cinema is essentially specific choices and the decision of what you're supposed to be looking at. And like with an amusement park ride, when you're on a roller coaster, you're totally in the moment. You're experiencing this. You're going through this all. But cinema is so specific, and every single shot is chosen for a very specific reason. Is chosen to say something very real, and it doesn't matter what the movie is in general. Every single movie is made with that basic idea. And so to empty out the idea, as Scorsese is trying to do, that it's not cinema is just it's not accurate. It's not real. It's not fair.
And
So,
the irony, he's
yeah.
using de-aging technology, which has been
That's-
used
yeah.
in superhero movies and franchise movies, in these theme park movies, is interesting as well as using it in The Irishman. So.
Sure.
All right. Well, hopefully this is the last time we talk about this. No more comments, please. We do want to save some time right now for your live chat questions. So if you haven't already sent one in, we're still taking them, so send them in right now. Let us get to this Steve Calderon question. He's asking, after the disappointing opening of Gemini Man, should Paramount be concerned for Terminator Dark Fate?
Yes. But not for the reasons you think, because of Gemini Man. It's more that everyone is cautiously optimistic that this is going to work because we've been burned so many times. And yes, I know people can defend Rise of the Machines or the other one, Salvation, not necessarily Genesis. So there are defenders for those two films. But overall, we've been burned so much. And Schwarzenegger's back again. By the way, I'd love to write a column about how we never need to see Schwarzenegger in a Terminator film again. So we'll see. We'll see if that ends up, if it gets good reviews and it's positive, people go in droves because they want to love this franchise again. But I think everyone's just kind of waiting.
I am going to use the latest Halloween as an example, and I know it's a slightly different scenario considering how recent Genesis and also Salvation are, but I really do think that the retcon thing is going to make a very, very big difference for this movie. I think it's going to leave people more open-minded than they might have been, and also not just Arnold Schwarzenegger, but it's a big deal that Linda Hamilton is coming back, and I think that's creating even more urgency than maybe we saw with previous installments. And I also think that having Tim Miller at the helm could make people more enticed to check this one out after the success of Deadpool. So I am kind of hopeful right now, and I think that the earlier projections we saw had it maybe coming close to 40 million. I'm sure it cost a lot more than that to actually make this film, but I'm just wondering if it could do fairly well domestically and then at the international box office make a nice chunk there too. So I don't know. I'm holding tight to my faith in this movie.
Well, you mentioned Halloween, which it's not only the stars, but I mean the fact that John Carpenter came back for that, kind of shepherded, and you have James Cameron coming back for this. I think I agree with you in the sense that like I don't think Gemini Man and Terminator have too much correlation, if not just because of also going back to what we were just talking about the importance of brands and like that significance. So I think Terminator, it's not going to be so much about its like what audiences are looking for in terms of like sci-fi action and that kind of stuff, but more so like are people excited for a new Terminator movie?
All right, let's get this. I already said I don't want to talk about it anymore, but we're gonna, because Z Jones CB is asking, what film would the panel recommend to Scorsese to prove comic/superhero films are cinema? I would choose The Dark Knight.
I
What
would
would you
choose,
choose?
honestly, Winter Soldier, just because, I mean, that is such a wonderfully crafted conspiracy thriller inspired like story, not to mention just the action is just so brutal and intense and beautiful that, that would be it.
The four I would recommend are Winter Soldier, absolutely, because it's a political film. Logan, which is a Western. Wonder Woman, because that's essentially Donner's Superman. And Joker. Those are the four I would say. This is the genre and the capabilities of the genre if you don't want to get all caught up with the costumes and superhero stuff.
All right. I think I can't just recommend one. I have to say some sort of MCU movie just because he has specifically name-dropped Marvel. I think Winter Soldier would be a good way to go. I also think that, and it's not just because it's my favorite, I would say Guardians of the Galaxy because of how many different boxes it ticks and how it shows the possibilities and the potential when you really throw a whole lot of creative juices into something like this. It would definitely put Logan on the list. And then I would probably also throw in something like Shazam. I mean, just show the range of this genre and show the heart of it too. I mean, I feel like if Martin Scorsese saw a superhero movie that tugged at his heartstrings the way that some of these have with me, I don't know, when something moves
His
you to
heart
that
will go
extent,
3 sizes this day?
I mean, a little bit. Yeah, you can't deny it when something moves you quite like that.
Sure, I agree.
All right, let us get this J. Scott for real question. Which iconic performances might be improved by swapping out the lead with a young or older version of themselves? Oh, that's complicated.
That's a tricky one.
Yeah.
What iconic performances?
So I guess like I think he's trying to get at a movie that has an epic quality that maybe shows a character at different stages of their life played by different actors.
Sure.
I know this
Wow,
is
that's
this
a
is like
toughie.
this is a real thinker there.
It's tough because immediately my mind went to Gandhi and an older Ben Kingsley playing an older Gandhi, but he did play the older Gandhi in the movie, and it was incredible considering he was only 24, 26 years old when he did the film. Same thing with Orson Welles and Citizen Kane. Playing the older Kane, it was incredible. He's 24 years old. So believable. So I would love to see an older Orson Welles or an older Ben Kingsley tackle these roles. That's the easiest way I would go there.
I mean, you just brought my brain to Robert Downey Jr. at the end of Chaplin, though, which was
yeah, good point. That was not so good.
Yeah, so
Agreed.
I mean, maybe I guess that might be my choice. That's a tricky question, though. Yeah.
All right, want another one?
Sure.
Sorry, Dorian's dropping notes in the chat that I don't understand, so I'm not going to touch that one. Rebecca Bosie, I'm sorry if I pronounce your name wrong. What's a movie that got bad reviews that you love?
Oh, that's...
It's a tough one. I've got one.
Yeah, hit it.
It comes right to the top of my mind right now because we were kind of talking a little bit about this before we even started the show. I'm going to go Pet Sematary because...
The most recent one?
Yeah.
Okay.
I really loved that movie. We were talking a little bit about festival hype and, admittedly it could be out there. I walked out of that movie at South by Southwest absolutely loving what they did with that adaptation. And even though I was not going to let anybody tell me that my opinion was wrong, I did go out of my way to see it a couple more times after.
Yeah.
And I still love that movie. It is a nasty, nasty, dark movie with exceptional performances. I think it's a great adaptation that changes the source material in ways that serve that movie well. So my vote is for that. Why are you you got an evil grin on it? I don't like it.
I don't know what the line is to walk between guilty pleasure and a movie you love that
Sure.
got bad reviews. Because
That's fair.
I would throw in all the Transformers movies that I actually enjoy watching. Watched like 30 minutes of one again randomly this weekend on FX. But for me, I would probably throw in, and I hate saying this, but I absolutely laugh my ass off at A Million Ways to Die in the West. I don't know what it is about that film that just makes me laugh. I love them. I know every word to the Mustache song. I just have something about that film, and maybe because I'm a massive fan of Westerns, it has a piece of my interest already, but it's just something about it that makes me laugh the whole time. And Charlize Theron is great, and Liam Neeson in this thing is crazy, and it got terrible reviews, but I still thoroughly enjoyed it.
I am completely blanking. So, I'm just kind of searching my entire brain. But this is, that's it's so broad of a subject that I'm just completely ruining this.
Wait, now I want to look at my whole best of list to see if anything got completely trashed here.
And Independence Day Resurgence, that's another one.
No! You purposely bring that up to piss me off, don't you? You're driving me nuts for a surprise, surprise. All right. Here is a question from Mr. Robots who's saying, what do directors like about the high frame rate, or what is the advantage of the new technology?
I'll take it. I mean, I certainly think part of it is, did you guys both see it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I think 3D is certainly a huge part of it.
Yeah.
And this is something that James Cameron, I think, has been kind of talking about, which is that the whole idea of 3D is, not the whole idea because there's also the stuff that flies out at you, but to create this immersive experience. And when you are using a higher frame rate and things look sharper, they look cleaner, it creates more of that kind of window effect. And I actually think that's something that Gemini Man did really well, it did exceptionally well with, which is just creating that window and making me feel like I was actually looking into the window of this world.
There were some moments where I thought it worked really well and then some where it didn't. I think one of the things that bothers me most with 3D in general is when there's something in the corner of the frame. Mm-hmm. You know how that visual kind of throws you off? Yeah, maybe gives you that queasy feeling. I think with the high frame rate, what works best for me in every movie I've seen done using that technique is the landscape shots. I think that's when it looks the most beautiful. Otherwise, I actually think it has a cheapening effect where, in particular, I keep thinking about this one early sequence in Gemini Man where it's close quarters, hand-to-hand combat. And I don't think it's just because of the high frame rate. I also think it's the way that these shots were framed and how the action was cut.
In the wide.
It almost has a little bit of a soap opera, kind of hissy fit kind of feel. And it doesn't play well. I don't feel that intensity. So I think there's some pros and some cons to this technique.
I think people just directors. There's certain directors, just like certain human human beings who just have a proclivity for liking the highest end technology stuff, right? Lucas was doing this way back in the 80s and 90s, like going to make sure the theaters could show his films the way he wanted them to be shown, those kinds of things. Nolan still goes to the ArcLight and watches it. My friend is a manager there. She says he comes and watches his films there before he approves them being shown there. So the directors are very aware of the higher end technology and how they want their films to look. That's the interest, I think. Yes, and I agree with you. It's still an uneven type of thing, and I get the cheapening thing, absolutely, Perry, but I also think that the whole sequence in the convenience store, the 50 cal was incredible.
Yeah.
And if you could show action sequences like that, and Drew McQueen and I were speaking about it afterwards, he said that I think it's the same people that are going to be doing the Avatar stuff. I think it's Cameron's company. So that underwater stuff you saw in the movie, that's just a sample of what you're going to see in these next Avatar films in terms of that high frame rate and that kind of technology come together. And that's exciting for me as a man who loves that stuff.
I will say that the slow-mo stuff looks beautiful in high frame rate.
I was going to just highlight that underwater stuff because, especially because James Cameron he's underwater obsessed, but he has talked about how Avatar 2 would do a lot of underwater photography, and I will say those were the best shots in Gemini Man, the stuff that was underwater. So, yeah.
All right, let's get one more question in. It's a big one. I have a list here that will hopefully load so I could help you guys out with it. The Big Enchilada is asking, what's your most anticipated upcoming movie in 2020 as far as DC and Marvel movies go?
Oh.
So obviously the first thing that came to my mind was Birds of Prey. It's just, I think it's adding another layer to the DC film franchise. I want to see what Kathy Ann can do behind a major production like this. I think that ensemble is phenomenal, and I loved that first trailer. And yes, I think every trailer needs more Mary Elizabeth Winstead, but I do think it was very smart of them to focus on Margot Robbie for the first trailer. Focus on Margot Robbie, what she's going through and what it means for the full feature overall, and then the next time around, start to introduce the group. So I am going to say Birds of Prey just to give you guys a little time to think.
Well, I'll jump in there with Wonder Woman 1984, just because the first movie really is fantastic. I mean, the third act is a little shaky, but Patty Jenkins proved that she has a great eye for this kind of stuff, and Gal Gadot is absolutely wonderful. The new setting is really cool. I'm excited to see what Cheetah looks like. I think there's just a lot to be excited for, and it's weird that I feel like we've been waiting for this movie for a really long time too. Because I guess we were supposed to be seeing it now.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I dare one of you to say New Mutants right now. I dare you.
Is that even good?
Assuming that's a 2020 movie.
Do you remember when we did the fantasy football drafting thing for upcoming movies?
Yeah,
I think I drafted New Mutants 2 years ago now.
Bad pick.
Seriously.
What do we have Marvel coming out?
Black Widow. We have Eternals.
Yeah.
That's it.
Eternals is the one I'm looking forward to because I think Eternals has the highest bar and the thinnest high wire to walk. Okay. I think so. Birds of Prey comes in with Harley Quinn already the standout of Suicide Squad. Wonder Woman 1984 already has its thing. I just think Eternals, it's all new characters. It's all interesting. They're really dialing into the cosmic aspect of it all. Will it really work? So to me, I'm looking forward to see if they can get that, and that'll make me excited for New Gods as well. So which is of course DC. So I'm excited for that more than anything else. And I like the cast.
4 female directors.
Right.
I love the sound of that.
Cool.
All right. No better way to end this show than on that note. Rocha, Eric, thank you guys so much for coming in today. Bright and early Monday morning. Adam in the booth, Dorian in the live chat. As always, thank you guys so much for your help. And a huge thanks to everybody out there watching this show. But you know what would get you an extra thanks? Liking and sharing this episode of Movie Talk and then making your way from here on over to Collider Live. They go live at 10 a.m. Pacific, and then we're back tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. PT for a brand new episode of Movie Talk.